Watch The Atheist Experience live Sundays at 4:30 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTAXP and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callaxp.
It's time to get sexy on Secular Sexuality.
Hello, and welcome to Secular Sexuality, the ACA show that never complains about having a headache. I'm Christy Powell, and I'm joined tonight by sexologist and coach, Dr. Sexology herself. Welcome to the show, Dr. Renee.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, super excited to get into some really important topics that have been maybe overlooked in the past. I feel very derelict, and so I'm happy to be crossing this off of our list tonight, because tonight we're diving into a discussion on desire discrepancies and learning if tongue twisters really can be the secret to a long relationship. So give us a call with your stories and questions. We're at 512-991-9242, or you can catch us at tiny.cc/callsex, because the show is coming right now. Beautiful. Well, I want to jump right into it because I'm very excited to hear more about your pick. Dr. Renee, what's got you turned on this week?
Well, this week, what's turning me on is something that turned you on last week on your previous show, which is the principles of pleasure. But I don't think you gave it justice, so that's why I'm revisiting
Absolutely
it.
not. No, I'd love to hear more.
So it's a 3 hours docu-series, and basically what I really like about it is like the gurus that are talking about the science behind everything that they're presenting.
Yeah, as soon as I saw Emily Nagoski speaking, I was like, okay, we're in good hands. I can start to, trust what's happening here.
Exactly. And what I really like is that two of the big names that are in there, Emily Nagoski, as well as Dr. Lori Brodo, they live in Vancouver, and this is where I'm living right now. So these are people that they're right in my neighborhood, basically, and I have great respect for them. So just looking at the female brain power that is behind this series really gets me excited that it's giving the opportunity to women to learn more about their bodies and their sexualities, about how to behave in relationships, about how to deal like in their minds with their sexuality, how to deal with consent as well, how to take initiative, like if you want to go, like Dirty Lola is talking about like different sex toys that you can buy, which a lot of people that I see in my practice, they're afraid of going out and buying a sex toy, or there's just so many they don't know which one to go and pick and choose. So just the fact that you see it, that it's being normalized, I think is really spectacular. And talking about Vancouver, like the other thing that I wanted to say that is turning me on this week is after 2 years of COVID, the Vancouver Fetish Weekend is finally coming back to Vancouver.
Woo!
And this is going to be an amazing gathering of super sexy, kinky people that I've missed seeing in the last 2 years due to COVID. So really excited about those two things.
Yeah, we were talking before the show, during this pandemic, especially the early days, it was definitely my kinksters that I was among the most
Yes.
worried about, because you need that opportunity. It's just not the same by yourself sometimes.
Yeah, those Zoom meetings didn't give it justice,
Sure.
Dressing up in the latex in your living room when your kids are supposedly on the other side of the door. It didn't reach the same.
Things got a little cramped.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a little.
I may or may not have inadvertently interrupted a sixth grade math lesson, and it's still a sort of uncomfortable topic of discussion.
Those
But
cameras at the wrong timing can be. Quite interesting.
Yeah, well, we've all been living in these small spaces, and it's exciting to see the world open up. So I
I agree.
am glad to hear that these types of events are coming back, just like spring flowers.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that in mind, let's jump into to the topic for tonight. Before we get started, I feel like desire discrepancy is one of those like almost awkwardly clinical terms that's painfully obvious, but maybe not super clear. So, can you maybe walk us through what we're talking about when we say SDD or sexual desire discrepancy?
Yeah, it's a bit different, STD. Um, um, Basically, the simplest way that you can look at it is when you're looking at a couple, regardless of the gender of the couple, one person wants more sex and the other person wants like less sex.
Sure.
And that's very normal. It occurs on a regular basis depending on different time in your life. Like, I don't know if you're menopausal, if you're having a baby, or if somebody dies in the family and you have to take care of an older parent, or there's children in the house and you're completely exhausted and there's too many chores, or you're about to have a promotion and you have to put in more work, therefore you're tired. So that your level of wanting to have sex will be high or low depending on where you are in your life, and then it doesn't always match with your partner. And the not matching, the difference in the sexual desire, the difference in wanting sex, is what creates a problem. Now, the bigger the gap, usually the more it creates discomfort in the relationship.
Sure.
And if that length of time that you have a big gap gets longer and longer, we're talking, it's not 1 week, it's turning into a month, it's turning into a year, it's turning into 5 years, then it becomes a problem where people get dissatisfied. If nobody's dissatisfied, there's no problem. So if it's okay and you're able to live with your partner, um, um, with this issue, and it's not creating fights, and like you're okay with it, you understand your partner and life goes on, you never need to seek the help of a professional.
Yeah. In order for something to be a problem, it has to cause an issue. I hear
Exactly.
that.
Yeah.
But there are two parts of your definition I really love and really want to highlight, because I felt like at the top you did not center this around identity. You know, you
Mhm.
said you may be at a place in your life where perhaps you're struggling with sexuality because of this, because of that. Certainly everybody is going to have their own maybe like erotic set point that is going to be, somewhat genetic or personality or identity based. But I think we maybe rush to blame it on who we are as people without really taking a moment to like look at our lives and maybe find a little bit of compassion for the
Oh,
stress and everything else that our partner might be under.
oh, definitely. So like when you look at not wanting to have sex, where does that come from? It comes from so many different places. It can be hormonal, it can be you're taking medication that's decreasing your libido, it can be having too many plates that are spinning at the same time and you don't have time to take care of yourself. And taking care of yourself means making sure that your sexuality is also fulfilled. So I believe that it's not like you have to look at why the person is not feeling sexual at that period in their life, and how you can help them with that problem. And if that problem is resolved, then maybe the person's sexuality, their wants, their desire is going to go back to a normal that is pretty much like it used to be before.
Yeah, and I appreciate the focus on distress, because again, this is a place where we tend to blame things on identity or like personhood.
Yeah.
And so it can start to feel like there's a right way and a wrong way to it. And so remembering that whether you have sex once a week or once a day or once a month, it's really not about the quantity so much as it is the goodness of fit. Is that all fair to say?
It's very important that it fits in the relationship, or like, so people kind of get together and they have that image that the sex that they have in the first 2 years that they're together is going to be like this for the rest of their life. And this is a very big misconception. So the in lust phase of the relationship is very different than the part of like the sex that you're going to have at the beginning is going to be different than the sex that you're going to have
Sure.
in a long-term relationship.
Yeah, or to translate that into poly terms, new relationship energy is a hell of a drug.
It's all of those good hormones that are flooding your brain, making you look at the world with pink goggles. It's spectacular, I tell you. It's
It's worth it for an occasional hit.
yeah.
But I think this is a pretty straightforward idea. But how common is it for couples to not just deal with this, but to really struggle with it?
So if you look at long-term relationship, about 80% of people will have a discrepancy in their sexual desire at some point in the relationship. And it does not necessarily mean that if it comes back a second time, it's going to be the same person that's going to be the person with the low sex drive or the
Mm,
high sex drive. It can flip because your circumstances that you're going through in your life can vary in the couple at different times. So this is completely natural. Did I answer the question?
yeah, no, absolutely. I guess
So
I
let me put a little bit more numbers in there.
sure.
If you look at low sexual desire, you're going to have women that will complain about it. About 1 in 3 will suffer low sexual desire at one point in their life. For men, it can be closer to 1 in 6. So is it gender based? Not necessarily. There are hormones that do affect it. There are states like, like women's that are going to go through pregnancy or menopause will be affected differently based on their hormones. But the fluctuation of sexual desire in women has a massive range, and so does the fluctuation in sexual desire found in men. So you can have a couple, let's say a heteronormative couple, that will be together, and then the man is going to have the low sex drive and the woman is going to have the high sex drive because the differences are so huge.
I so appreciate you highlighting that. We so often, I mean, anytime we're talking about sex, tend to say men are like this and women are like that, forgetting that within group variance is almost always greater
Yeah,
than out group variance, than the
exactly.
variance between the two genders. And the stereotype here is almost always that there is like this horny man and the wife just won't give it up. And that exists in some number of couples. But I mean, at least in the people that I work with, it is more often going to be the women that have the higher libido. And I know I've seen statistics that place it almost as high as 60%. Does that line up with your experience at all?
Uh, well, in my practice, when I have discrepancy in sexual desire, I have a very strong monogamous heterosexual part of my practice, that those couples have young children, and because of that, the woman has a tendency to have an added workload. So she's taking care of the kids, she's working, she doesn't have time for herself. At the end of the day, she's completely exhausted,
Hmm.
she's touched out, and at like her entire day is people going next to her going, I want this, I need that, and she's always answering to other people's wants and other people's needs, where she's always coming last. At the end of the day, when the husband comes home from his day of work and he didn't have as many chores to do in the house or with the kids, in the majority of the couples that I see in my practice. So I'm not saying that it's like this
Sure.
for everybody.
Well, and I guess I also just wanted to highlight the touch component, because you mentioned that briefly, but I think it's really
Oh
significant
yeah.
to remember that if you are holding, picking up, carrying, soothing, stroking
Eh,
a child all day, your touch needs are going to be very, very different than if you are sitting in front of a keyboard all day.
exactly. So basically the woman feels that her body does not belong to herself. So the last thing that she wants is to feel something inside of her that's like not hers, not wanted, not anything. So like it can, like her libido, her sex drive can crash drastically, and his, like, he needs to feel like he's loved and he's wanted. So it's very difficult because she used to be a partner, a sexual partner, a loving partner, and now since she's become a mother, she's not a partner anymore. So like I see more couples in my practice where it's the woman that has the tendency to have a lower sex drive,
Mhm.
but it's still an approach that you don't put the blame on the person with the low sexual desire. You put the blame on this difference that we're facing, that one person wants it more and one person wants it less. We're going to address it. We're two teammates and we're going to address the problem together. So the problem is the enemy, we're a team, and we need to conquer it together. And that's the approach usually that makes it so that the couple doesn't fight with one another, pointing fingers and blaming one another.
Yeah, I mean, that's just good couples work, right? Or really
Yeah.
just being a healthy couple is to recognize that it's not you versus your partner, it's you and your partner versus the problem, in so much as we even need to use like violent rhetoric around it. But I do feel like, particularly when it comes to sex, we're so quick to pathologize. We're so quick to say horn dog or nympho or
Yeah.
prude or unmasculine, or we very quickly seem to go for the jugular here when we talk about people's identities. And I'm curious if you would highlight like a particular cause of that. I mean, I know we're living in a very patriarchal, sex negative culture, but what do you feel is at work in some of these gendered stereotypes?
Well, I find that I guess for a guy, you go, oh, you always want to have sex if you're going to put it that way. And then it's like, well, obviously, he's a guy. He's going to want to, like, it's easy for that person. And obviously, the girl is frigid, which is a term that we don't even use anymore. But it's always an accusation of the sorts. It's easy to put it like this. We've seen it over and over in movies. It's represented that the mean woman doesn't want to have sex. There's never a reason why she doesn't want to have sex. It's just because she's cold, she's not
Mm-hmm.
receptive, you
It's a
know?
personality type.
Exactly. I think the media is a lot to do with the blame that we put on the gender role or how sexy you have to be. Um, yeah, I find that every time I see a movie, it fits in a very cute little box, you know, it never
Yeah.
comes out of that box.
I mean, and many of these depictions, like if you take a random romantic comedy, it's
Mhm.
not necessarily the case that they're modeling something wrong or that doesn't exist or that's unhealthy. It's just that they show you one type of couple in every single film, and then healthy, normal
Over.
people who
Yeah.
are in many ways typical, which typical is not necessary to be healthy. But even in situations where you are in the majority, you might not realize it. and partly because we're not really talking about it and we're not really measuring it. We don't generally have very good statistics here, but also people are so quick to pick up on some of these negative stereotypes because of the finger wagging and the pressure put on our sexuality.
Yeah. No, definitely. I agree with what you're saying. I I would like to have more filmmakers that come from a more diversified background and just heteronormative white guy at a certain age. Like
Yeah.
it seems to be the same story spoon fed to me. Like
Yeah, or
with the,
if a character is sexually diverse, that's their entire character.
yeah.
And we're just now starting to open up to orientation, but anyhow, I don't mean to get too off track, but media depictions do upset me.
No, I agree.
Sure. Well, so what sorts of problems show up when a desire discrepancy or mismatched desire in a relationship isn't dealt with or managed in some sort of way?
So the biggest problem is that there's going to be a finger pointed to one person. So
Hmm.
it's if you're going to have the conversation when there's a sexual problem, most people don't have uh, the guts to go and address it with their partner, or they do it in a wrong way. So you're in the middle of having sex and then you start fighting. Having sex in the middle of the bedroom is like the worst place to have a discussion on your sexual issues. So make sure that if you're going to talk about sexual dissatisfaction that you have, do it outside of the bedroom. Don't
Find
do it.
someplace very
Yeah,
unsexy that you're
yeah.
not going to sully.
Well, plus you're like in the future, you're not going to want to have sex because it's going to bring back
Yeah,
that
don't bring
member.
that bad energy into the bed. I hear
Exactly.
that.
So it's like talk about your sexual issues outside of the bedroom, like make a time to schedule that discussion. Don't ignore it. And don't when you're talking about it, make sure that you create a safe space and you don't point the finger towards the other person. Make sure that you talk about it in I statement and that you're trying to, this is something that you would like to solve with your partner so that it brings you back closer together. So the result of solving that issue is going to make it better. If you don't talk about it, then the time that you're going to have sex, the intervals in between your sexual activity are going to get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Hmm.
You're probably going to start thinking about somebody else in your head a lot more than just to fantasize about it, but it's going to be like, oh my god, like sex with anybody else but with my partner is going to be like would be nice at this point. So if you mismanage the sexual discrepancy, if you don't face it, at one point it will become a bigger problem, even to the point of separation.
Yeah. What kinds of misinformation or flawed assumptions muddy the waters here? Because I feel like so much of this is just based on lack of communication, like you're highlighting, lack of a willingness to be present with these issues and working through them. What kinds of bad assumptions get in the way?
Well, bad assumption. You can say that an assumption is that women want less sex than men.
Sure.
That would be a myth. That would be, like if the women were brought up with all the same tools of accepting their sexuality, of being allowed to masturbate as freely as men when they're growing up and when they're an adult female, if they had all the same rights, same education, same no repercussion, like if you're allowed to take the pill and not get pregnant and stuff like that, then maybe her libido would be as healthy as the men. So
Hmm.
maybe education needs to be different for that myth to disappear.
I'm
Um,
amazed at how many parents are just bewildered that little girls do masturbate, that little
yeah.
girls discover and explore their bodies the same ways that little boys do.
Yeah, and like I in my practice, I see a lot of female that bring a lot of shame and They're just not comfortable letting go because all the messages that they had when they were growing up were good little girls, don't do that. Well, your entire upbringing up until it's okay for you to be the kinky like goddess in bed, now suddenly like I'm supposed to be a virgin, and then I'm supposed to be the kinkiest person in bed, and then eventually
Sure.
my so the messages are very like, how can I have a sexuality that's for me instead of for when you think it's okay for me to be liberated and enjoying my sexuality, you know. So I find that the good little girls don't do that messages
Yeah.
are gonna make sure that I'm gonna have a lot of clients for a very very long time.
Yeah, it does feel like a safe field to be in, no question. And I
Yes.
want to value sexual health. Like I want to, of course, not say anything to suggest that we shouldn't be working with professionals like yourself and working towards developing a healthy sexuality in a society that doesn't really support it.
Mhm.
At the same time, I have to ask why there's so much tension, you think, around this specific issue, or why it's difficult for us to communicate and work around it, because we don't expect our partners to exercise the exact same way or the exact same amount that we do. We might, sleep in the same bed, and we might relatively expect that they would want the same amount of sleep that we do, but sometimes they stay up later than us and vice versa. Why is it that when it comes to sex, we expect everybody to be just automatically on the same page?
So I blame Disney for this.
Fair. Yeah.
So Disney basically told you that you will chase that ideal person. There's only one person for you for your that's out there, and then you go on a hunt and you go for that search, and then you find that person, and you've done everything in your power to get that person. And once you have that person and you go into a long-term relationship, you start to take that person for granted as well. And then you don't see them, or you don't put the work that's necessary into your relationship, and then you gain 40 pounds, or and then you let go, and then you're like, but he's stuck with me or she's stuck with me for the rest of our life
Yeah,
together.
that
you,
Disney
you know
idea definitely shows up in terms
Oof,
of relationships are things that have to be tended. It,
definitely.
it doesn't just magically stay the way that it is. It's
but
always going to change. You have to guide that change.
but Prince Charming is going to take care of all of my needs.
Yeah,
And I
exactly. It should just
kind
happen because of magic and
I
love.
know, and I disagree with that because I seriously think that it takes a village. Like when I need a gardener, it's not going to be my partner that's going to be the best, necessarily the best at doing that, or the
No,
mechanics, or taking care of the kids, or the cook, or the whatever. But now suddenly, my partner that I live with, he's supposed to be good at everything, and he's going to solve all of my needs. And now in bed, it's the same thing. So now I have my best friend, my he's supposed to be like the best stripper, the best sexual at guy at cunnilingus or whatever, like he's supposed to be like my biggest fantasies all at once everywhere. It's kind of a big bill to put on somebody's shoulder. There's a lot of expectation. So sexual satisfaction, you're looking at your partner and you have all of the weight that you're putting on them, and then your partner necessarily is not going to be the best at all of those tasks, and then
sure.
suddenly you're going to look at your partner and go like, I'm a bit disappointed, I'm not as turned on. It's like,
I
okay,
sacrificed everything for you? Yeah.
level of expectation is massive. So come back down to earth, make sure that you see your partner for the quality that he or she has, and make sure that you don't think that you're God's gift to the other person. Come back down to earth on what
Well,
like.
enjoy the sex that you're having rather than
That's what,
fretting over the sex that you're not having,
yeah,
right? Like
stop watching Netflix and definitely.
Yeah. Well, we've already got a handful of calls coming in. So if it's all right with you, let's go
Yeah,
ahead and jump on the lines and
go for
talk
it.
to Justina in West Virginia. Justina, what's on your mind tonight?
I wanted to call because I asked about what if I'm afraid of sex or I'm scared of sexual situations.
What exactly would you be afraid in the sexual situation? Because sex can be very large, huh? Like if some people, sex could mean penis inserted somewhere, or it could, for some people, it's a way of being intimate. You can give a massage and just rubbing genitals on one another, and that can be your definition of sex, you know? So what part of sexuality are you afraid of?
I'm usually thinking of intimacy issues.
Okay, so are you afraid of being intimate because you're more vulnerable with your partner?
Yeah.
So is there a type of conversation that you need to have with your partner before you get intimate so that you would feel more comfortable doing an intimate act with that person?
That would probably make sense.
Yeah, so it sounds to me like there's a conversation that you need to have um, with your partner to put your mind at ease, and so that both of you like understand one another, and that you can expose yourself and be more vulnerable like with your partner, and then you're gonna develop some trust, and then it's easier to go through the motion. That's kind of my gut feeling on this one. Does that make sense to you?
Okay. Yeah, it does.
Maybe have the hard conversations outside of the bedroom, make it sexy at dinner, you know, like candle lights, and say, I don't, it's difficult for me to not to know the issue, but like if it's a topic that you go, you know, I don't like my body, like I feel very exposed, so I would like to keep my shirt on, like when we're having sex, if it's okay with you. And then eventually, like when I feel more comfortable, oh baby, I love you the way you are. Like, do you know what I mean? Like there are conversations that sometimes it's bigger in our head, and then when we discuss it with our partner, like they don't see it like this at all. It's mostly an issue with us, and then our partners like just put our concerns at ease when they say, no, I don't see it like this at all, I see it in this specific way. Does that make
Okay,
sense?
thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much. I think I'll leave it there. All right. I really appreciate everything you say about expanding your definition of sex, and I think that's a important thought for all of us to hold on to. That
Hmm.
sex can be a number of things, and so if there's one aspect of it that is a challenge or uncomfortable, that there's still so much more to explore and to enjoy.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Let's take another call quickly. This is Mulative in Canada. Hey, what can we do for you
Hello.
tonight?
Hi.
Howdy.
I noticed that the topic was sexual desire discrepancy, and immediately some memories flowed back into my head. So I wanted to share them with you, some stories, and bounce them off you and see what you thought.
Go for it.
Please.
All right. So yeah, like I wrote in with the topic of like proper ladies don't talk like that. You said that exact something similar to that, like just after I had typed it in on the web form, and yeah, like the one of my earliest relationships, yeah, my girlfriend said exactly that. When the topic went to sex, she would clam up and she would have such trouble. Like she wanted to tell me, but I had trouble reading that from her. And like, I guess it wasn't as much a desire discrepancy at that point as much as like a desire blockage.
Yeah.
And sorry if you want to jump in.
No,
I'm
no, no.
trying to
Sorry.
not ramble. But yeah, like we thought up a solution eventually. She would write me a note, and when we were just figuring things out, she would draw a little diagram of the clitoris and like the little circle around it that you want to trace around, and just like stuff like that. We figured stuff out eventually, but it was still like she would never initiate. Like if she was horny and I was neutral, because I don't think I was ever really not horny, but when she wanted to initiate, she did this thing, and I didn't know what it was until she explained it much, much later, like months later, but she would put her finger on my chest and draw a little numeral 1. And I thought she was just being cute. We were watching a movie, and we just kept watching the movie. But when I would initiate, I would be a lot more obvious. I don't know if I can say on YouTube, but yeah, I would be a lot more obvious, and you can probably imagine what that means.
No, my imagination is very wild. So
I was about to say there are so many things that could mean. I can imagine a couple hundred things that might mean.
Exactly.
But
Be more
I'm curious
specific.
about yours.
Yeah. Well, it would be much more forward than a numeral 1 on her chest.
Sure. No, and that's
yeah, like,
an important thing to acknowledge, that it's okay to say, would you like to have sex?
Yeah.
You know, it's great to say, yeah, you want me to bang you? I mean, whatever like works for you. There's no correct vernacular, but it's nice to be able to have a partnership where you can discuss these things. And when you can't, that's okay too. I appreciate her willingness to initiate, but it's valuable when we can be clear and direct with our partners.
True.
Yeah. And like, even speaking of that, that was even difficult for me to do, just until I had met like my partner after that. But like during this time, it was hard to say, like, if I say sex, will I sound too, booky? And if I say you want to bang, will I sound too much the opposite? It just feels like there isn't a right word to say it. But like, yeah, the partner after that, like, she was the one who did initiate, and she just straight up said, "Can I see your penis?" And that was hot. I thought that was really attractive. But we were also both
all
very,
words are right, so as they're clear.
Yeah.
It's nice to feel wanted.
It probably helped that we were both of us were bookworms, so we kind of, it felt normal.
Yeah, I might walk that back and emphasize, like, all words are right so long as they are clear and kind. That we are compassionate to our partner's needs. And I don't think that means we need to be afraid to initiate sex when our partner has had a long day. But we need to know the difference between a request and a demand, and how to take no for an answer, and to not create a shame loop, or to feed into a shame loop that turns a handful of no's into a string of no's that then starts to rock our confidence.
Yeah. There are also a lot of different ways. Without using your words, you can set the scene in your house, and suddenly your partner comes home and you have like candle lights and you have a specific music and you're dressed a different way. It's a lot more inviting. So instead of having to be very forward, the person kind of walks in, and then you're like, oh, is this happening tonight? So without any words. So if the person does not have the vocabulary or the bravado to say it, they can still do it in a different way. And suddenly, like the Herald twirl is coming, and it's like, hi, how are you? It's like, how was your day? Or you can do sexting. You can go at the store, and you're trying lingerie, and then you take a picture of yourself and you go, should I buy this? So I strongly encourage sexting in any relationship. Like, it's so worth it. It kind of
prepares
gets your
for what's
mind.
happening that night.
Of course, it gets your mind started. So people that, like, if you need some preparation and you have something to look forward to, the anticipation is rising, and it's definitely a tool that you can use. So, in long-term relationship, what I find is that people stop trying to initiate sex. They basically go like, hey, whoops, sorry, the camera. Hey, honey, you want to have sex? And they go directly for the genitals, and they
The
stop.
tease in our strip tease gets taken out.
Oh my God. And it's so sad, it's how to go as basic as possible. It's like, you want to come tonight? It's like, wow, start by kissing me, like, start like romance me just a little bit.
I can be a little bit oblivious. So I try to tell, like when I meet with a new partner and I'm probably being oblivious to their hints, I want to tell them, like, if you're horny and you want to tell me and make sure that I know, I give you permission to take your hand and put it straight down my waistband. Just go for it. I give you permission for that because I am oblivious.
But you can add some elements to your repertoire. You can make it so that you know there's not just one road that leads to sex, that there's many different ways, and then you make it nice and diverse.
Yeah.
No?
I agree with that. That but when you're just like figuring each other out, like eventually I'm going to learn my partner's hints and we'll figure things out from there. But like if I'm being oblivious, and I do tend to be oblivious, then like I give them that permission, like right away, right off the bat.
It's a good permission to have.
Yeah, being able to communicate on a handful of different frequencies so that if you're not picking up the messages somewhere, you can get them somewhere else.
Yeah, and you know, in the middle of like Easter dinner, like with your family, maybe like grabbing your penis like in front of your mother and father may not be like, maybe a slight innuendo will get you like to have sex.
I would be very surprised.
I would be
very surprised if I met someone that forward.
Well, yeah, I think your parents too. So maybe be open to understanding each other's language. Sexual language in a different way that's less direct is going to be helpful in certain situations.
Really, just be as broad as you can about the way that you communicate these things and the way that you experience them.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you so much for giving us a call. Anything else before we head out for the night?
Oh, well, no, I just wanted to say that this topic was very important to me because of the early relationships that I have, and I hope that we can take the experiences that we gathered from this and give that to the new generation so that they can have a happier sexual future.
Oh, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, it's we were kind of prognosticating before the show, and me maybe a little more grumpily about just sort of the direction things seem to be heading with sex ed. But I do want to believe that information like this is getting out through Netflix, through YouTube, through all of these different mechanisms. And if nothing else, we all here doing this right now can do our part to try and create a more sex positive world.
Yeah, I agree. Talk about it. Talk about sex. Make it more normal for people to talk about it, and at work with friends, with family, and normalize it. I love to normalize it.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on.
Definitely appreciate. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great night.
Thank you.
You too.
All right. Well, so much to say. Like you said, this is one of the most important issues that I think we can really all come together around and be doing something about. But before we jump back into the interview, let's take a moment and see what's been going on around the rest of the ACA.
If you can get someone to acknowledge that there's a person suffering from gender dysphoria, and the way to alleviate that dysphoria is with a particular treatment, then they then have to justify why we shouldn't be applying that treatment. It's if we teach kids about sex ed, then we also have to send them to war.
Right. I don't think that makes sense, though.
Shocker.
Like this is a story that like is flagrantly right out in the open fake. Like some religions, like you can get some wiggle room on it, but this Joseph Smith, we know he made this up. He's up there with L. Ron Hubbard in absurdities.
The creation of suffering. That mate, I'll mute you if you're going to try and talk. I'm obviously not done. I'm not finished talking.
Are you done?
Oh, no, not really. I'm going to click the little mute button if you're going to start getting all grumpy.
The ultimate foundation of morality, which I would describe as well-being, is a subjective foundation. But once you have a foundation,
you've had this conversation for decades about morality and continue to repeat the same things. But when it
Because
comes,
I'm right.
Well, jumping right back into things, what do you see as a healthy way to frame or to wrap our head around desire discrepancy as an idea?
hmm So I find that the healthiest way to deal with it is not to blame the person. So if you think that your partner wants more sex than you can't say that, oh my God, you always want sex every time you approach me. It's like, so not to point a finger, not to attack your partner, but more trying to understand as well. So coming from a place where it's a problem that the two of you have in common is a big way, like an adult way of facing the couple's issue. And also, I find that if you try and take the time to understand where your partner is coming from, sometimes be patient and think that this is a transient period, and the fact that they're applying for a job and they're stressed about it, maybe talk about why it's stressful for them, and ask how to alleviate some of the stress from your partner's shoulders. Maybe at that point, when your partner feels seen, heard, understood, then suddenly they go, oh, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me and seeing me. And now I feel like I want to be closer to you. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes instead of going like, oh, why are you asking? Why are you pressuring me to have sex again? It's like you're never helping me do the dishes, or do the load of laundry. Sometimes it's a little, just a little act of kindness is going to go a long way. And then it's like suddenly you're like, oh, now suddenly I have time for you. Suddenly I have, I've separated from my big day of work, and I'm able to go put my work in the past and now focused on what the rest of my evening with you is going to look like. So sometimes it's the little things that are going to diffuse the bomb and that are going to facilitate the your increase in desire towards having sex with your partner. So I find that not jumping to attack mode is the
Mm-hmm.
biggest thing. Having the patient conversation and like understanding where your partner is coming from is like the first real step to solving that problem for sure.
Yeah, that type of common humanity framework is a big part of the way that I focus on things, and I think that it's so valuable here to
Mhm.
recognize that if there is a problem, quote unquote, in our sex lives, that's not a problem that our partner is causing. It's something that they are experiencing with us, and just recognizing that all couples deal with some type of sexual tension, or really just tension.
Yeah.
Suffering is part of being alive. So the fact that your sex life doesn't look exactly the way that you want it to right now
Mhm.
doesn't mean that you're a bad person, or that your partner is a bad person, or that anybody's doing a bad job. It just means that it's a difficult thing and that there is a problem to be looked at, which is part of life,
Yeah.
identifying problems and then perhaps doing something about them.
Yeah. So I find that also asking what what does it mean for you to want sex? Like what need is it going to fill? For
Mm.
some people, it's like they want to have the tension, the physical tension released by the orgasm, and it's something that they can do by masturbating. But some people, it's like they want to feel close to to their partner. They want to have that intimacy, and then you can go and get that intimacy like different ways. If sex is off the table, you can spend an evening where you massage one another, or you take a bath and then you talk about your day or about what's on your mind, and just that can create the intimacy that's necessary for your partner to feel like they were close to you that night, even if sex is off the table. So I think that understanding that the need for sex, what need it fills for your partner, uh, can sometimes solve the problem.
Yeah,
Um,
and if I'm looking for intimacy and you're looking for release, those are both valid and potentially could be incorporated in the same act, but perhaps not. Like perhaps the type of sex that I mean when I say I want to have sex is different than what you had in mind. And if we're not communicating about those needs, then not everybody's itch is going to get scratched. And after a while, if you're not being scratched where you itch, you're not really interested in getting a back rub anymore.
exactly. Yep. You scratch
So
me, I scratch you.
yeah. And it's valid for us to have different itches. It's great when they line up, and so often we can take care of both people with the same offering, but not always, and that's okay too.
Yeah, definitely. Takes a village.
Are there any pitfalls that couples often fall into when they start to work on changing their, I guess, their relationship dynamic or in addressing some of these issues? What kind of mistakes get made?
Um, so if your problem is that one person wants it more and the other person wants it less, make sure that you find the root of the problem. So instead of focusing on a different issue, like just focus on um, why am I tired? Is it because like let's look at my lifestyle. So if I need to start exercising, start losing weight, so if I need to eat better, maybe I'm gonna have more energy, so that in the end of the day I have more energy for us. What is it? Is it the wrong time of the day that you want to have sex? Like I get horny midday and you get like we only have sex past 10 o'clock. I'm exhausted. I can't do it. Maybe just changing the time of the day is going to solve that issue. So make sure that like addressing the right problem will solve you a lot of work maybe for nothing, I believe. Like I said, don't do the blame game, because that just builds wall instead of saying, oh, I want to be vulnerable in front of you and expose to you why, like, I feel hurt, or I don't feel pretty, or like I have body image issues or whatever, like just be vulnerable in front of your partner instead of attacking one another, and that's going to bring your conversations closer. um what else? um
Well, just to highlight what you're saying, I know this is obvious and I know everybody has heard it and heard it and heard it, but it feels like you're telling me the solution is to communicate,
oh
or that
yeah,
90% of all of the solutions to 90% of your relationship problems might just be to talk about it peacefully and calmly and in a way that where you're hearing each other.
definitely. And I find that when you're living with somebody, you think that you know everything about them,
Mm,
but you start to limit what you do and what you say, because it creates a certain type of fighting or a certain type of negative conversation. So I find that sometimes when you have a date night, bring up questions, just random questions, and just answer them going, this is what I feel, or like I have a tendency to I'll give you an example. So on a date night, you can talk about fantasies. What are your fantasies? Okay. Well, my fantasy is to have sex blindfolded, and I want to have six pairs of hands touching me. Oh, interesting. Okay, well, my fantasy is to be taken by force. So I don't want to be able to say yes or no to it. It's like I have no choice, but, and, it's like rapish, but whatever. So I in my practice, I always say there's three categories of fantasies. There's a fantasy that you could do right away. Oh, you want to be blindfolded and tickled with a feather, like in your erogenous zones. We can do it right here, right now. There's nobody. Let's do it. Okay. The second category of fantasy is a category where when the stars align, the threesome that you want to have with my best friend, Well, when she comes and visits, when we're not in our periods, when we're, whatever, when the stars align, let's do it. And let's have a specific set of rules that, like, I don't know, you don't have your orgasm when you're with the third person. You don't, like, it would make me feel insecure or whatever, like no texting without me being present. It's like so if the stars align,
Drawing
if
those lines, communicating those lines.
of course, like make sure that everything is good. Yeah, we could have that fantasy. I'm not opposed to it, but it needs to be done under certain circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough. And then there's the third category of fantasy where it's like, it's in my head, it turns my body on, but I never want it to happen.
Sure.
The gangbang with the football team, my body reacts to it. I think, yeah, I can masturbate to it. I come very fast, but I don't necessarily want this to happen. So, and you don't even have to share that with your partner, that third category. You
Sure.
can keep it to yourself in case your partner wants to use it against you if you don't have the strongest relationship. So open the lines of communication so that you talk about sexy topics without critiquing one another, so that you understand your partner's headspace, because we think we know everything about our partners, and surprise surprise, we don't know what's happening at the office, because they didn't want to tell us because we were going to overreact, and then it's like, oh, they didn't want. It's better if I don't talk to you about it. So for me, I prefer when my partner approaches me with any topic, I like to know what's in his head so I know who he is. I don't restrict his fantasies and his desires in his head. And then it creates topics of conversation where I understand my partner better, and I want to be close to him because he shares these details that nobody else knows. And then also, like, he he becomes more lovable for me, because, like, to me, because suddenly I see like that aspect of his life that if I didn't ask, like if we didn't slow down our pace of lives, like we would never have known this about one another. So I feel lucky that he shares like his deepest thoughts with me, and that makes me feel closer to him, and therefore I want to be intimate with my partner.
I really appreciate the way that you frame that. That sharing your category 3 fantasies, the ones that you don't really want to act out necessarily, but
Yeah.
that you enjoy for yourself. That it's not an obligation, but that it is a gift, because so often we other those things and we feel so awkward or gross about them. And I know I probably say some version of this idea almost every week, but it's worth repeating that your fantasies are fine, that you are responsible to your partner for the things that you do and the things that you don't do. And that's it. That's the end of the list.
Yeah.
If something excites you or turns you on, even if that thing is objectionable in some way, in the sense that you would never want it to really happen in real
Yeah.
life, let me point you to all of the violent video games. Let me point you to
Oh,
all of the
yeah.
superhero
Oh,
movies.
my
Like, I
goodness.
don't actually want to get bitten by a radioactive spider. That doesn't mean I don't think about it like a lot. The fact that we fantasize about these things doesn't mean that we are approving of them. And when we have these ideas around violent sex or things like that, it doesn't mean that we are approving of those things. And I think that being willing to share that with your partner, while certainly not an obligation, is just an opportunity for intimacy.
When you create that conversation, when you start asking questions, when you start to try to understand what tickles the fancy of your partner, then you're more willing to try what's going to turn them on. If you
Mhm.
don't know what turns them on, how can you try it? If they tell you, at least they give you a little bit of a map that you can follow. You can try it. And then they can teach you, and you can learn a part of their world that turns them on.
Mhm.
It's like if you go and when I started dating my partner, he loves cycling and I love rollerblading. I said, okay, no problem. You teach me your world and I will teach you my world. And now suddenly we have two activities that we're doing together instead of having just one. So he shared his world with me, and I'm like, okay, well, I can do that for you if it's something that I feel I'm comfortable trying. And when I say try, give it a fair shot. You know, the first time you're going
Sure.
to try something, like it's not going to feel normal or comfortable. You're not necessarily going to be good at it, but go go for it. Do your education. So have the information that's necessary before you do it. Go do it with an open mind, be willing to learn and to fail and to try it again. And then if you really don't like it, then you can have a voice and say, you know, I tried that fish and multiple times, different ways, and I really don't like to eat that fish. Like, I'm done with that fish. Then it's like, okay, no problem. We're not going to eat that fish anymore. But thank you for trying, because for me, I'm going to continue ordering it if I'm allowed, but then I'm not going to impose it on you.
Hmm.
Or I'm going to eat it when I'm eating with somebody else, but not when I'm, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah. Let's be flexible and willing to try for our partners. I
yeah,
really like to introduce Dan Savage's GGG, or good giving and game, to this
yeah,
conversation, because it's
good
that
point.
idea that we all desire a partner who is good in bed. That doesn't mean that you never make mistakes, because they're not really mistakes. Like a great dancer is somebody who's light on their feet, but they're also willing to sort of push themselves into situations where they might stumble a little bit, and that's
Yeah,
part of the fun. But you're good, but you're also game for anything and willing
yeah,
to try. It doesn't have to be anything, but like a sincere willingness to be open-minded and to experiment and to trust yourself and to trust your partner. That doesn't mean that you have to jump straight into being like waterboarded in the stockade if that's not your kink. But if you are willing to be curious about bondage, if you're willing to be
yeah.
curious about whatever it is that your partner is bringing up, and that you be giving, not that you need to exclusively give. In fact, I think it's important that a good sexual partner is able to receive, able to enjoy themselves, but willing to do things for the person that they love.
So one of the biggest problems of long-term relationship is that you get stuck in a rut.
Hmm.
And getting stuck in a rut and having the best meal that you love, like you love lobster. Now you start eating lobster every night of every week, you get tired of lobster. So adding a little bit of diversity will help you stay interested into your sex life with your partner. Once you start to have like the sex tango 1 2 3, do this position, flip over, cha cha cha. Like it becomes like the same dance over and over again.
Yeah.
It can kill your mind. It can make you go like, oh, not this again. Even though it's the sexiest person you've ever seen, eventually, if you're always doing the same thing, you're gonna want it. So like you need to add diversity. You need to try new things. If you always have sex on Saturday night under the covers in the dark, the
Hmm.
first time that you have sex during the day on Sunday is going to feel like Christmas. It's going to be spectacular. But if you always have sex after that on Sunday midday, like always the same way, you're going to get tired of this. So add different elements. Always push yourself out of your comfort zone and talk about it before, talk about it after. Try to say, what did you like about it? What would you change? Fine tune the experience with your partner. Try new things. Try things that turns him on, turns her on. Try things that you've read or heard in a blog or whatever, like you've seen this on a movie, you had friends that tried this with like always try one step further. Never fit in a box where you never touch those limits, those boundaries ever, because they zapped you once and you're like, oh no, better not try this. I'm not gonna ask for a blowjob because she didn't like it like the first and last time I asked. It's like, well, what didn't you like about it? How can we do it a different way? How about we try it like like talk about it, like push the boundaries in a way that's going to be playful with your partner, that's going to be like we're doing this together, like I'm sharing my space with you because I love you. How about we still have fun doing it? So the biggest trouble of long-term relationship is stopping wanting what you have.
Yeah.
Esther Perel.
I mean, you've said it a few different ways, but to just continue to highlight, expectation is the enemy of experience. If you assume that sex is going to look one particular way, then it's gonna end up looking that way. But if you're present in the moment, it actually will give you opportunities to branch out and to try new things and to sort of follow your heart, so to speak.
Exactly. Have sex in every single room of your house. Like try different
Check. Yeah.
outfits, try different scenarios, try different position. Try out in public if you don't get caught, or if you're allowed to. Try it. Try everything twice,
Yeah.
three
Well,
times.
I want to just sit here and keep talking about how to have sex and how all the different ways to have sex and just flush out the rest of the hour that way. But I think it's really important that folks have a access to the appropriate professional if they are listening to this tonight and thinking, maybe we could do something here. Maybe it's worthwhile to have a meaningful conversation or to make some change. And as a sex therapist myself, I know I get questions all the time about what it is I actually do. Like, what is sex therapy and who's it appropriate for? So I'm hoping you can kind of walk us through who are the people that we can reach out to for help on these sorts of things.
Uh, you can ask people. Some people just don't know where to go and get their information from. So if you need to have like somebody for planned pregnancy, you could go there. You could go at a sex store. You can go to ask for help on which toys to bring into the bedroom, how to use it, or what's the next step, what's new out there. You can go. I know in Vancouver we have the Taboo Sex Show that comes once a year, and you have tons of exhibits from people with that do photography for boudoir photography or whatever. Just make sure that you reach out to somebody that has imagination that can direct you in the um, uh, right place for the service that you need. So if you have an issue and you're fighting, you need to go and see a therapist or a sexologist. If you've been like if you don't want to have sex because you've been raped in the past, go and see somebody that's going to help you heal those wounds of your sexual abuse. It all depends. um, Go and do research online about your type of issue and who can help you with that specific sexual issue that you're looking for. But I would recommend a sexologist for sure.
Yeah. Well, so if people are having to do a little bit of Googling and work with professionals on a place where they may feel incredibly vulnerable, what are some warning signs for how to avoid like pseudoscience or abusive treatment?
Yeah, so I like diplomas. I like
Sure.
research. I like the tried, tested, and true. I like when somebody is their standard of practice is held by um, a committee of their peers, and there's a place for you to, like if there's abuse, there's a place for you to go and tell that you were abused by this professional. um, if you're going to go for a counselor, a therapist, or a sexologist, make sure that you read some of the articles that they write, or what they're saying resonates with you, because you want to be seen, you want to be heard, you want to be feel like the person can solve your problem. I think that's very important. Once you've made, like if you've tried different therapists and you feel like both people in your relationship are feeling that they can move forward with the type of advice that they're getting, and you're fighting less and less, then you've chosen very well, but if it doesn't work, don't be afraid to tap out. It's not because they go, okay, next week at the same time at the same place. Like it's your money. Like if you're not, know when it the work know when it is for you to do the work, and if you don't want to do it, then it's on you. But if you're being forced to do something that you don't like, and like it's too much of a stretch, then this may not be the person that should be in charge of the treatment that you need to take,
Yeah. Well, are there any tips that you want to recommend for folks listening tonight? Any exercises or routines that you think might be useful?
So for me, I find that people with their super busy work life and family life, and they have so many responsibilities everywhere, I find that people are losing touch with their sensuality. And
Mm-hmm.
sensuality is basically using your senses. So if you look at something like in the spring, when people tell you, like, slow down, smell the roses, it sounds completely stupid. But the fact that you take the time to use your senses and actually receive the information and not filter it out because you're too busy running to work, and like you're like people's brain are so good at filtering out noise that now our sensuality is being filtered out. So a lot of the work that I have to do with my people is to make sure that they start to use their senses to the maximum. So whenever they see something beautiful, I tell them, stop, look, analyze why it's beautiful. Touch something that you like, it makes your fingers, gives you a good sense of appreciation. What is it? Silk, velvet, I don't know, your food. Some people touch their food. Enjoy it. Enjoy the difference in temperature or whatever. The smells that you like. Light that candle that you got for Christmas and you think smells good. Like, instead of bypassing it all the time, create the environment where your body will be stimulated with all the senses. That will make you become more sensual. Sensuality leads to wanting to be sexual. It's another way of feeling pleasure into your body. So I seriously tell people to add sensuality everywhere, to start to see it. Stop filtering out of your busy day-to-day life. I also want the people to put sex a little bit more everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Put a sex book into your bathroom. When you're sitting there, instead of going through Facebook, make sure you're reading something about sex that you find interesting. You have 15 minutes of undivided attention. Now's the time to read that book. Sex begins in the morning. So the sex that you want at night, make sure that you start preparing it. Prepare your partner for what you're going to do the entire in the evening. So spontaneous sex, I never believed in this. When you
Mm-hmm.
were dating with your partner at the beginning, you took the time to, it was 1 week before until you saw them. You went to buy clothes that you wanted to look sexy in. You took the time to go for a haircut. You went to the gym. You didn't eat as much. You did so many things. That sex that you had that you thought was spontaneous, you started it a week ago. Do the same thing. Put as much effort into your relationship as the beginning where you were dating them. It's not because you're married or that you're in a long-term relationship that now suddenly all the effort goes out the door. Don't take your partner for granted. Put the effort in. Start seeing them. Start putting them in focus again. I think that these are all things that we take for granted, but it's so easy to just not do it, and you just check it and you just go like, no. So scheduling sex. Yes, I know it sounds tacky. Share a calendar. Put sex in the calendar. Like
Absolutely.
like
Yeah.
like like if you're not gonna have sex because it's not in your calendar, that's a very easy fix. Just put it in your
Just put it
calendar.
on the calendar. Yeah, we don't have to overthink these things
I
sometimes,
know.
and we do get wrapped up in that Disney magical thinking that if we love each other enough, if I'm pretty enough, if I'm hot enough or manly enough, that sex will just happen organically. And there's no other part of our life that just we expect to just show up. Like we
I know.
prepare our meals, we sit down at the beginning of the week and we decide what we're going to eat, and we
Yeah.
go to the grocery store and we do
Yeah.
all of this preparation. We spend anywhere from 10 minutes to 10 hours getting a meal ready, and we think that sex is just something that we can just like open up a bag and it'll be good to go.
Yeah. Good sex is hard work, but the payoffs are really worth it,
Yeah, good. Good work if you can get it, no question. Well, with that, we're running a little bit behind. Oh, actually, let me move on because I wanted to see if there were any other particular resources that you wanted to point us towards tonight, or anything that you wanted to be sure that the audience had opportunity to learn more about these things with.
Well, so I have 4 books here that I really enjoy. Mating in Captivity, of course, by Esther Perel. If
Absolutely.
if you're going to have a long-term relationship and having to keep that flame of passion alive, how other people are dealing with it and feeling that you're not alone, like Mating Activity in Captivity by Esther Perel is very, very good. Like it's one of the go-to books. I really enjoyed the book Rekindling Desire by Barry McCarty. I
Mm.
don't know if you've had
That is
the.
actually the only one on your list that I wasn't familiar with. I've
Oh,
already added it to my Audible account for what it's worth, but I'd love for you to tell me
yay.
more.
Well, it kind of tells you how to not take one road to your approach to sex, that the more roads that you will have to lead to the same endpoint,
Mm,
the better
mhm.
your repertoire, the better the possibility of outcome for you to actually get the sex that you wanted in the first place. How to deal with the issue as well. So like they talk about the team approach instead of talking about like you did this to me type of
Sure.
blame blame the other person game. So I just thought it was a good book for a couple that they could read and discuss and say what resonated with you and what do you think, how do you think we should approach it, like, and make it more personable for what we're living. So I
Mhm.
really enjoyed that book. Reclaiming Desire, like, was a book I really enjoyed because it really talked about, for me anyways, like hormones and how different levels of hormones in your body makes you a pursuer or makes you a person that's more receptive, because we all have the same hormones in our body, male and female, but it's the levels of different hormones that will make you more, hey baby, do you feel like having sex tonight? Or, oh, I don't know, like, convince me, so I think that this was very interesting as somebody that loves science. Like, if that's what you like, I really enjoyed that book for that. And Opening Up, I find that is a really good book for anybody who wants to step outside of the monogamous type of relationship and how to do it in a safe way and what's out there and how to discuss it with your partner in a way that you're not going to break up your relationship because your partner is going to say, oh no, I'm not enough for you, and therefore, like, you want to dump me. So I really enjoyed those 4 books. I know it's a lot and it's pretty much all over the map, but yeah.
No, I think you got people well covered. And if you missed any of those, you'll certainly be able to find them in the show notes for the episode. But before I start to take us out for tonight, I guess I was hoping that you could offer a little advice for people who are watching about how to feel about these discrepancies, because I think it can so often lead to a sort of anxiety and then panic and then shames and then maybe some numbness because of how powerful those emotions can be. And I recognize that we can't just fine tune these things, but what kind of advice would you offer people on how to think about or how to feel about this discrepancy issue with their partner?
Yeah. I find that every time that there's a challenge in somebody's life, like you can see it as a downfall or you can see it as an opportunity to grow and get better at something. So, right now, you may be feeling like you're further away from your partner. But if you take the time to listen to your partner and to try to fix the issue with them, it may bring you closer than you've ever been with your partner. So um, I believe that taking the time to refall in love with your partner because you're putting in the work can be giving you another 10 years to your relationship if that's what you want. So investing in your relationship is never lost time, money, or energy.
Well said. Well,
Mhm.
where can people learn more about you and about your work?
So I have a website that's called drsexology.com. It's
Mhm.
very rudimentary because I'm old and, you know, I don't really know how to do nice, flashy things. But you can reach me on text at 604 or on my website where you're going to have my email address, which is drsexology@gmail.com or drsexology.com for my website. So nice and simple. Sorry, no
No, no.
no
Doctor
Twitter, no.
Dr. Sexology is exactly what to be searching, but then of course we will have all of those links, or already do have those links in the show notes for the episode.
Thank
And
you.
I want to take a quick moment to remind people about AEN Podcasts, our one-stop shop for all of the shows around the ACA. You can find the show notes that we're talking about, as well as a bunch of my research and links connected to the show in our Facebook fan group, which is going to be at tiny.cc/FBSSG. Just after our conversation tonight, if you are watching this live, you'll be able to talk with Dr. Renee without anybody recording it, without this huge international audience. And I do hope that you'll join us to keep this conversation going at tiny.cc/ACD Discord. I mentioned it last week, but I want to make sure folks know that we have new and, in my opinion, greatly improved merch at tiny.cc/merchaca. Some wonderful things to take a look at. Thank you, of course, to everybody behind the scenes that helps make this show work. Everybody on our incredibly sexy crew cam, as well as our moderators and our thumbnail designers and the incredible staff that help us put all of this together. Thank you all for everything. And finally, I wanted to see what kinds of sort of final thoughts you wanted to leave with the audience tonight, because we've been talking about such simple but important and foundational and big and scary and there's so much to these issues, and it can be really easy to walk away, I think, feeling maybe a little bit empowered but also a little bit intimidated. So what would you encourage people to hold on to in their back pocket as they walk out tonight?
It's your sexuality. You
Mm,
only have one life. Make the most of it. Shame and regret are unfortunately emotions that are wasted. So have conversation. Don't have regrets. Make wonderful love connections with people that you trust, and like make sure that you normalize sex by having good sex positive conversations about on any topic. I think.
beautiful. No, I appreciate that notion that this is the last life that any of us is going to get, and we should
Mm.
enjoy as much life and sex as we really possibly can.
One day you won't anymore.
Fair
That's
to
gonna be a sad
say.
day.
So, with that beautiful thought, a pinch of death anxiety, a
No!
scooping handful of the life affirming powers of sex, let me encourage everybody listening to fall in love with their partner again, to
Yeah.
be sensual, to be romantic, to light a candle, to maybe dial up one of those category 3 sex fantasies, and to give themselves a big ol' orgasm. Or better yet, give somebody else one.
Love it.
Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.